вас за то, что вы присоединились вовремя. Как и ранее, эти встречи будут параллельно переводиться на русский язык. Для того, чтобы выбрать язык перевода, вам необходимо нажать на соответствующую кнопку на экране, выбрать русский язык. И также перевод будет параллельно транслироваться на канале Telegram в университете Бхактивиданты. Госвами Махарадж, мы готовы начинать. Я тогда вам оставлю приветствовать Шрилу Рагунатха Махараджа и представить тему сегодняшнего обсуждения.
А Махарадж присоединился уже?
Вы ему присылали ссылку?
Да, конечно.
Ну, я, честно говоря, пока не вижу. Сейчас посмотрим.
А мне что-то нету снизу ничего.
Да, это кнопка «Глобус», которую, как подсказывают участники внизу. Может быть, Махарадж, вы могли бы, если у вас есть возможность, написать Шриле Рагунатхе Махараджу еще раз спросить, если у него...
Он посмотрел все, я ему сообщил, он уже все просмотрел, то есть, он с минуты на минуту будет.
Да, и также мы анонсируем сегодня после этой встречи Шрила Бхактивинода Госвами Махарадж займет еще буквально 10 минут, чтобы представить результаты занятия по герменевтике, которые проводил он, и те преданные, которых он уполномочил для студентов университета Бхактивиданты. Есть много приятных сюрпризов. Это займет буквально 10 минут и будет очень интересно. Пожалуйста, не отключайтесь после занятия. Также мы хотели поприветствовать Чайтанью Прабху, GBC по России. Спасибо большое, Чайтанью Прабху, что присоединились сегодня к нам на обсуждение этой важной темы.
Харе Кришна, поклоны примите.
Рагунатх Махарадж присоединился, Госвами Махарадж.
Я не вижу.
Сейчас.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, our time, early morning, your time. We're sorry to disturb you so early in the morning. So I will say a few words of introduction, and then I will ask you questions which you are supposed to answer. Srila Radhanath Maharaj, we all know him, and he is Srila Prabhupada's direct disciple who has done so much for spreading Srila Prabhupada's teaching all over the world. He was traveling very intensely, and he published many books, especially his book, Journey Home, made many people to think about spiritual path and to join Srila Prabhupada's path of bhakti. We all love him. He is the leader of wonderful, thriving community in Mumbai, and not only in Mumbai. So anyway, I'm doing it for my own purification, not to embarrass you. I'm really happy that you agreed to come to us. This program has been going on already for nearly 1 year, 7 months or 8 months already. We met with many Prabhupada's disciples who talk on certain aspects of Prabhupada's teachings. And we are very excited to have you speaking to all the leaders in Russian-speaking hemisphere about the relationship between the balance between sadhana, how to bring our sadhana, how to execute our sadhana in a balanced way. What are the considerations? What is the most important aspects of sadhana? So that's the topic of your speech today, and I will be hosting your speech. Russian translation is going on simultaneously, so we can just speak straight in English with you. I don't know if you would like to say a few words of introduction, or we can just start speaking.
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyati Shatarine Bansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patithanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I am very grateful, very honored to be among all of you today. And it is a special festival for my lonely heart to see so many of my beloved well-wishers on this computer screen today. Achyuta Priya Prabhu, I have not seen you in so many years. This is something very special. And so many others. If I would have to say every name, but it is a special blessing that His Holiness Bhaktivigyan Goswami Maharaj has bestowed upon me to give me this opportunity to be in the association of all of you. Thank you very much.
We have 150 participants. It's a record. We never had so many before, already 151. So everyone is excited to hear from you. And I will ask you the first question. The first question is, what is the most important aspect of sadhana that Srila Prabhupada gave us, and how to properly execute it according to his instructions?
In Krishna consciousness, what is high and what is low is very much according to our state of consciousness. In many ways, this is the most basic question, and it's also the most highly elevated question. Because really, what is sadhana? Srila Prabhupada emphasized various aspects of sadhana at various times. But primarily, he very strongly spoke in one purport in many lectures that of all the instructions that the spiritual master gives, to chant at least 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra attentively is prominent. Srila Prabhupada called our movement the Hare Krishna movement. And the Yuga Dharma is the chanting of the holy names. Haranama, Haranama, Haranam, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyata. So Srila Prabhupada gave the greatest emphasis as far as personal sadhana on the chanting of our japa, at least 16 rounds every day. Attentively. There were two aspects of Srila Prabhupada's instruction that need to be taken very seriously. For those who are initiated devotees, he said at least 16 rounds and attentively. Haridas Thakur chanted 192 rounds, at least, attentively. And he is our Nam Acharya. That means he's teaching by his example. But we cannot imitate him. We follow in his footsteps. And we trust the words of our founder, Acharya. He has, on behalf of our whole Guru Parampara, he has given us this instruction. And at the time of initiation, he expected us to take a vow to follow this instruction, to chant at least 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. Srila Prabhupada also emphasized the reading of his books. I think in our coming questions, we will directly be addressing this. And at the time of initiation, we vow to follow the 4 regulative principles. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and no meat eating. In certain ways, following the 4 regulative principles doesn't appear to be sadhana, because it's mostly things that we don't do. But it is essential to make our sadhana pleasing to Krishna. Because ultimately, samsiddhir haritoshanam. Ultimately, our spiritual advancement does not come just by our chanting rounds. Our spiritual advancement comes by pleasing Krishna. Because bhakti can never be achieved. Bhakti is given. Bhakti is given by the mercy of Krishna. In the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that that bhakti is very rare because Krishna subordinates himself to one who has true bhakti. So Krishna only gives that bhakti to someone who is very sincere. And one of the most important instructions Srila Prabhupada gave in all phases of devotional service is to be sincere. Sincere means to really put our heart into what we're doing. to perform our devotional service honestly, without duplicity. Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that the first quality of a devotee is simplicity. Simplicity means without duplicity. And simplicity also means to be willing to accept with faith. Srila Prabhupada has promised on behalf of all of our acharyas that if we sincerely follow these instructions, we will go back home, back to Godhead. We perform our sadhana ultimately to please Krishna. We take our vows so that we really take very seriously what will please Krishna. What pleases Krishna is we accept what's favorable for devotional service and reject what's unfavorable. Actually, there are atheists who follow the four regulative principles. So it's not just by following four regulative principles that we make spiritual advancement. Four regulative principles put us in the mode of goodness. And the Srimad Bhagavatam very clearly states that we must come to the mode of goodness before we can transcend the modes of nature. Just being in the mode of goodness is mundane piety. But unless we're pious in this way, we cannot transcend the modes of nature. So by following the regulative principles, and of course, those are just the basic things. Then we set ourselves in a mode of goodness, and from that state, by chanting at least 16 rounds every day, we can transcend the modes of nature, become purified, and ultimately please Krishna. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado yasya prasadanagati kutopi. That by pleasing our Guru, we please Krishna. Mad bhakta puja abhyadika. Krishna is more pleased when we please the devotees. And how many times did Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, and our acharyas describe jumping over the acharyas, trying to approach Krishna directly. It's that attitude is simply not pleasing to Krishna, and therefore it's impossible. So an integral part of our sadhana of chanting at least 16 rounds and studying Srila Prabhupada's books is that we do it in a way that will please Srila Prabhupada and please Krishna and please our gurus. And I believe that is the most important, highly emphasized aspect of sadhana, to take shelter attentively of the holy names according to our vows in a way that is pleasing to our gurus and Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for emphasizing this aspect of sadhana, which we sometimes neglect. Sometimes not really neglect, but forget that it's not just doing something, but doing it in a way which is pleasing to Krishna. Thank you very much. So the next question, which our organizers want you to highlight, is very important and a little more complicated than the first one. Some consider the sadhana that Srila Prabhupada gave us to be too basic to bring about a tangible advancement, and try to supplement it with extra practices or extra shastras. Yet others say that it is too difficult and impractical for most modern people in the West and even in India. Why there is such a diversity of opinion in this regard? Do the principles of sadhana that Srila Prabhupada established have special empowerment that makes them feasible and effective for all? I guess the answer is already given, but
The when we take our vows for initiation, then we really do need to honor at least 16 rounds and the sadhana that Srila Prabhupada has given us. So to think that it's too much is improper. People can follow Krishna consciousness without committing themselves to initiation. And anyone who's chanting any amount of rounds, 1 round or 2 rounds or 3 rounds, we should very much encourage them to continue and to appreciate. But for those who want to really commit themselves and take the step of initiation, that's a serious thing. To actually take vows of initiation is a serious thing. And the minimum of 16 rounds is perfectly appropriate for those from any part of the world who actually are going to commit themselves to initiation. As far as the idea of too little, again, the quality of our chanting is what is really important. Are we chanting our minimum 16 rounds according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis, and Srila Prabhupada's instructions? Beyond 16 rounds, it's not the quantity, it's the quality that is so important. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, when he tells the devotees he wants them to have kirtan throughout the night, every night for 1 year, he taught them the method. Trinadapi sunichena, taror api sahishnuna, amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Put this verse on the string of the holy name and wear it always. This is the quality that our life must imbibe to really have quality in the chanting of the holy names. We have seen during Srila Prabhupada's time, after Srila Prabhupada's physical disappearance, that the sincerity of the quality of our service attitude and our humility is what makes our chanting pleasing to Guru and Krishna. If we chant 64 rounds a day, but we're not really striving to be humble like a blade of grass and forgiving and tolerant like a tree and offering all respect to others, then we would be better chanting at least 16 rounds, doing it properly. Srila Prabhupada was pleased when we chant at least 16 rounds in the proper attitude, with the proper attention, and then serve the Vaishnavas, serve the mission by spreading Krishna consciousness, by performing our service with the proper attitude. The service attitude is simply, absolutely essential for the quality of our sadhana. In many ways, how we behave throughout the whole day is how we're preparing ourselves to sit down and perform our personal sadhana. And how we perform our sadhana is how we're charging ourselves to actually be empowered to live in a service attitude throughout the day. So they are inseparable. The character in which we live throughout the day is inseparable from the quality of our sadhana, and the quality of sadhana is inseparable from how we will be empowered throughout the day. And this is something that we must really take seriously. I'm sorry if I'm skipping to other questions, but the false ego is very powerful. And unless we overcome the false ego, there's no real quality to anything we do for Krishna. And I remember in Srila Prabhupada's time, there was somebody who went to Mayapur just to chant, a lack of rounds every day. And Srila Prabhupada chastised him. He said, do not try to imitate Haridas Thakur. Chant at least 16 rounds attentively and perform your service. Performing our service is what gives us a service attitude where Krishna is pleased to hear our chanting. Maya is very powerful. From what I've seen in our movement over the years, and Srila Prabhupada spoke about this, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke about this, and Mahaprabhu spoke about this, that trying to become advanced beyond our qualification could be a great impediment. It could feed the ego. In Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srila Prabhupada said, if you're criticizing Vaishnavas, then when you chant the holy name, Krishna in his name will punish you. Why do we criticize devotees? Because we have this pathetic habit in our minds that we need to feel ourselves superior to others. And this idea of trying to be superior to others is completely contradictory to the instructions of Lord Chaitanya. Gopi Bhartur Padakamalayora Dasa Dasanu Das. We should try to be the servant of the servant of the servant, and we should be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, offer all respect to others and not expect respect for ourselves. This is like the barometer of our spiritual state of consciousness. So we could read many books and become very learned. But if we're actually learning, the more we learn, the more humble and respectful we will become. the more we will feel you are my Prabhu and I am your servant. If we're chanting more rounds than others, or we're learning more scriptures than others, and we think ourselves better, superior to other Vaishnavas, that means we're not feeding our souls, we're feeding our egos. That means we're not making progress. That means doing more is becoming less. To develop a real service attitude, to be really humble, is the essential principle of all of our spiritual advancement. And we must cultivate that attitude. And Srila Prabhupada, if we study his books, if we hear from those who really follow him, by performing this basic principle of chanting at least 16 rounds attentively every day and living with the character of a devotee with the proper service attitude, we will make much greater spiritual advancement than trying to increase our rounds or than trying to increase, how much knowledge we have. In one sense, Kirtaniya Sadahari, we're supposed to be chanting constantly. But it has to be with the right attitude. We have all seen, it's so common, that people learn something more, something new, something more rasika, something more deep in the details of bhav and mahabhav, and then they start criticizing others that I know more than you. What does that mean? All their knowledge is destroying their real bhakti. False pride is the greatest enemy. So what is important is Srila Prabhupada understood all these things. He gave us a perfect formula to develop a proper service attitude, to develop proper character, and to chant at least 16 rounds every day. And we could chant more. That's wonderful. But our chanting should make us more humble. Our chanting should empower us to appreciate the qualities of other devotees. Then we're actually chanting right.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. When you were speaking, I was thinking about some people, they were referring to the statement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Bhagavatam, where he says that I will only take food in the house of crorepati, of somebody who is chanting not less than 64 rounds a day. Of course, you answered already this question. There is nothing wrong with chanting 64 rounds, but it has to be in a proper attitude. But if you would like to elaborate on this point, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personal instruction was to chant 64 rounds, maybe you can say something a little bit about this. Anyway, if you want, otherwise we can just move to this question.
Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. By pleasing our gurus, we please Krishna. And you know, obviously Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, they have they know everything that that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants us to know. And if we chant the holy names according to our acharya's instructions, then we will please Krishna, and that is perfect and complete.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. It answers the question. So we'll move to the next question. Unfortunately, there is no electricity here, so my video is turned off. So the next question is, when Srila Haridas Thakur became infirm and ill, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised him to chant less. To which extent can we allow our health, age, circumstances to affect our sadhana? Is there a level of advancement at which one can lessen his or her sadhana standard and still progress spiritually?
Again, so much is based on the sincerity of our intent. Krishna consciousness is not just a mechanical process. It's a process of surrendering. It's a process of taking shelter. It's a process of pleasing Krishna. And Krishna reciprocates according to how we surrender to him. And Krishna is non-different than his name. When we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, we are with Sri Radharani and we are with Krishna. And according to how we're taking shelter, how we're surrendering to trying to please them when we're chanting, that is how the Lord is going to reciprocate as we're chanting the holy names. And according to how Krishna makes himself present when we're chanting, that is how we will be purified.
Yeah.
So when we take our vows of initiation, you know, in whatever situation we're in, we should very strongly be dedicated to fulfilling our vows, at least, at whatever stage of life we're in. You know, however, if for health reasons we're honestly not able to do so, then Krishna will fully accept our intent. There is no material impediment to advancing in Krishna consciousness. If materially, you know, physically, we're not able to do something, if our intent is honestly to do it, then Krishna will give us the same credit as doing it. But as long as physically it is possible, then we should honor, because that is a expression of surrender to Krishna.
I would like to digress a little bit and come back to the previous question. There is one consideration which kind of struck me. You know, you emphasize the proper attitude as the main factor for the efficacy of our sadhana. Still, sometimes I know, you know, you mentioned people who try to do more severe sadhana and more strict sadhana and become proud. But I also know people who kind of at one point of their life, and perhaps I also belong to this category of people, they become a little impatient they just become a little insecure. They say, is this, sadhana really going to bring me close to Krishna? This kind of doubt sometimes lingers in our mind. What to do with such a doubt? We kind of feel that maybe we're not progressing as much as we would like to. Recently, I met one leader, and he started crying. He said, "I've been chanting for so many years, and I still didn't develop attachment to the holy names." And he was so emotional about this. So, can you comment about this sort of attitude when we become little impassioned with the way we are progressing and try to compensate the slow speed of our progression by maybe improperly increasing certain aspects of sadhana? And as you rightly said, we're becoming less instead of becoming more.
As we're chanting Krishna's names, the question is, are we really developing a taste for chanting our minimum 16 rounds? How much are we putting, since usually our problem is not that if we're chanting at least 16 rounds, the problem is not that we're not chanting enough. The problem is we're not really attentive, putting our heart into it and developing a taste. Haridas Thakur was chanting over 192 rounds every day, but every name he was chanting, he had that higher taste. He was surrendering his heart and his love, and therefore, he could chant that many rounds and it was pleasing to Krishna. We should understand that enthusiasm and patience are two qualities of surrender. If we're feeling that we're not making proper spiritual progress, the first things we should ask, am I offending devotees? Am I making offenses to the holy names? There are 10 offenses to the holy names that are emphasized. Am I adhering to these, to honoring these 10 offenses to the holy names? Am I criticizing others? Am I trying to prove myself better than others? If I'm doing these things, then I'm not even chanting my 16 rounds properly. And when I'm chanting my 16 rounds, am I developing a taste? If I'm not developing a taste, then, yes, cry to develop a taste. That's, in many ways, that's part of the process. And, live without offenses and really have a proper service attitude. And, from that state, then as we increase, then we're increasing with quality, not just quantity. Krishna consciousness is not cheap. When Mukunda Datta was told that he would see Lord Chaitanya after 10 million births, he was very happy that to see Lord Chaitanya, all I have to do is surrender my life for 10 million births. That's very liberal. I only have to surrender my life for 10 million births and I'll see Lord Chaitanya. And, you know, we may have been chanting for, you know, 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. And what is that? It's nothing. To see Krishna, to love Krishna, to be eternally liberated in this spiritual world after all we've done and all of our offenses and all of our bad habits in this material world, you know, we should just be sincere and honest and really try our best to be proper devotees and to perform our sadhana attentively and sincerely as we can. And it may take time, but we remain enthusiastic. In many ways, this is a test of our surrender. When we're feeling that we're not making much spiritual advancement, but we continue the process enthusiastically. And the process is both quantity and quality. We chant the holy names, we cultivate knowledge, we perform service with the proper attitude. Because when we read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and we read Sri Chaitanya or Srimad Bhagavatam, the main theme of all these scriptures is so much the character and qualities of a Vaishnava. You know, what was Prahlad's qualities? What was Ambarish Maharaj's qualities? What was the Brijabasi's qualities? What was their character? That is tapasya. Yes, we need strong sadhana to have proper character, but we also need to strive to have proper character in order to have a sadhana that will please our gurus and Krishna. And this is a really sad tendency that devotees try to be advanced. I don't see any acharyas ever trying to be advanced. I see our acharyas trying to love and please Krishna and trying to be the servant of the servant to love and please the Vaishnavas. Because that lowly state of consciousness is actually advancement. When one becomes advanced, one feels, I have no love for Krishna. When one's not advanced, one thinks, I have more love for Krishna than you. What is advancement? That's what our scriptures and our acharyas are teaching us. So if you're not feeling love for Krishna, cry for love for Krishna as you're doing your sadhana and as you're doing your service in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. That's the path of perfection. In all religions throughout history, and it includes ours too, people have a tendency to use religious principles to boost their ego so that they feel superior to others. What is a Vaishnav? Srila Prabhupada writes, Mahaprabhu has spoken, a Vaishnav is one who has no envy. We should be praying to have no envy. We should be crying the holy names to overcome envy. Envy is a quality of the ego. So yes, we should be very, very strict in our sadhana with the right consciousness, with the right goals. Even if I feel I have no love for Krishna at all, that should not be my consideration. My consideration is, am I pleasing Krishna? Am I sincerely, earnestly, and honestly trying to please Guru and Krishna? Because that's where real spiritual advancement actually comes.
So, can I ask the next question?
Does that answer the question that you digressed?
Yeah, that definitely answers the question. Yes, that definitely answers the question. The next question is very important for every leaders, and I'm sure every leader at one point asked this question himself or his superiors. Leaders have to deal with a lot of different issues that take a lot of time and attention. How should they incorporate their own personal sadhana in their many services? What is the cutoff line? When should they realign their responsibilities around their spiritual life? For how long we can neglect our spiritual sadhana, or not neglect really, but put it into a secondary position by doing service, when we should really get serious about this and say, maybe I should change something in my life because it's just getting too much.
Our sadhana is like a foundation that we must build our life upon, our devotional life. It is essential. That is why we take vows to emphasize its importance, to emphasize the priority we have to make. And in many ways, an essential purpose of our intelligence is to sincerely balance our lives. Because we do have responsibilities to our service. And by putting our heart and soul into pleasing Krishna, by serving the mission, that's an essential part of our spiritual development. And if we're doing it in such a way that we're pleasing Guru and Krishna, that will be an essential part of our sadhana also. At the same time, in order to do it right, we do need to please our Gurus and Krishna by doing our sadhana very, very faithfully. We do need to prioritize that. And I'm just remembering when I was a young devotee, one of the most prominent people in our movement who was doing tremendous service and was very close to Srila Prabhupada, he fell away. And Srila Prabhupada said, because he was not performing his sadhana properly. And it was true, he wasn't. He was so consumed in his service that he wasn't performing his sadhana properly. So we have to create that balance. It's essential. There may be many, many demands, but it cannot compromise our basic sadhana if we're going to be spiritually healthy. It's something like our sadhana is like nourishment. It's like eating. And if a person is working really hard and doesn't have time to eat food, then how long is that person going to last? They're going to get weak and fall away. And similarly, if we really want to do our service with quality, we have to be pleasing our gurus and Krishna by our steady and diligent sadhana. So the priority of it is obvious because we've taken vows. That's how strong the priority is. And we must balance our life and orchestrate our life in such a way that by following our vow carefully, it will give quality to our whole life and all of our service. And by performing our service in a proper service attitude, that will give quality to our sadhana. And in this way, they're inseparable. Does that answer the question, Maharaj?
Yes, of course. So there is next question. I will ask the question number 6. Sometimes devotees practicing at home lapse either into a mechanistic approach to sadhana as a means of personal liberation, or into a perfunctory ritualistic mode as a means to ward off material sufferings, which is basically the same. How to keep our sadhana alive and focused on the ultimate goal of pleasing Lord Krishna.
Sravanam Kirtanam. An essential part of our sadhana is hearing and chanting. And we shouldn't just hear to learn. We should hear to purify ourselves. When we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, when we're reading the books of our Vaisnava acharyas, in one sense, we're learning so that we have information to navigate our own life in this world, and also to teach others. It's very important that we're not just reading to memorize, to repeat, but we're also reading to imbibe the message and become purified ourselves. And that hearing is an essential ingredient. Unless we're hearing properly, we cannot really chant properly.
Thank you very much. So next question is very much connected with this question, and I definitely have a lot of experience of reading for the sake of repeating, not for the sake of practicing it myself. And the next question is somewhat connected with this sort of an attitude. How can sadhana and preaching reinforce each other, and how can they obstruct each other? Between the two, what should be given priority, especially considering that Srila Prabhupada himself said to have sacrificed his own private bhajan in Brindaban for the sake of preaching?
To please Krishna is the heart of bhakti. It's the heart of our seva, and it's the heart of our sadhana. We have a personal process. It's not just a mechanical process. And in many ways, Srila Prabhupada said it, our Acharya said it, preaching is kirtanam. Of the 9 processes of devotional service, there's 9 examples of great souls who attain perfection by performing that one item of devotional service. Maharaj Parikshit achieved perfection simply by hearing. But how was he hearing? That's what's important to understand. He was drinking every word in as a necessity of his life. And the example of kirtanam is Sukadev Goswami. And Sukadev Goswami, the example we see, he wasn't dancing and singing. He was speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was preaching. Sukadev Goswami's kirtanam was his preaching. So preaching is kirtanam. But in order for it to have the proper effect, it has to be infused through our chanting of 16 rounds and through our kirtan. Again, they're inseparable. By preaching, by sharing this message, how much we're pleasing Srila Prabhupada, how much we're pleasing the 6 Goswamis, how much we're pleasing Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda Prabhu. Let's take the example of Haridas Thakur. How he did it is miraculous. He's Lord Brahma. He's the founder of our entire sampradaya. So he can do things that we can't. But he would go out from sunrise to, throughout the day with Nityananda Prabhu, and they would go door to door and village to village and beg people to chant the holy names and take to the path of bhakti. He was a preacher. When he was brought in Fuliagram to the king and the Qazi, and he was going to be beat to death in 22 marketplaces as a sentence. It wasn't because he was chanting. It was because he was preaching. You go back to your cave, you chant all day and all night, and we'll leave you alone, but stop preaching. That was the message. And Haridas Thakur said, I cannot stop preaching. It's the will of the Lord. I must preach. So he was a preacher, and he was out for so many hours a day preaching. And at the same time, they approached Jagai and Madhai. And Narottam Das Thakur, in his beautiful prayer, Nitai Pada Kamala, he prays that unless one receives the mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, one cannot achieve the conjugal pastimes of Radha and Krishna in Brindaban. And Raghunath Das Goswami, who's our Prayojana Acharya, first at Panihati, he needed to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda in order to reach Lord Chaitanya's service. And how did Lord Nityananda Prabhu teach him to receive? By just doing a menial, humble service of feeding everybody and pleasing all the Vaishnavas, So, Srila Prabhupada, emphasized the importance of Lord Nityananda for our lives. The mercy of Lord Nityananda. And Lord Nityananda Prabhu was especially a preacher. So, Srila Prabhupada, he was living in Brindaban, and he wasn't giving up his sadhana for the sake of preaching. His preaching was the crest jewel of sadhana. But at the same time, Srila Prabhupada was up every morning and he was doing his sadhana. He was chanting his rounds and he was totally absorbed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was hearing from all the acharyas as he was writing his purports, his commentaries to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavad Gita, the Nectar of Devotion, and other such literatures. So Srila Prabhupada, in the mood of following in the footsteps of Lord Nityananda as the means of approaching Radha and Krishna in Brindaban, that's the safe and sure way to actually enter into the rasas of Sri Brindaban Dham.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So the balance of preaching and sadhana is essential. Without proper sadhana, we will not have the power to preach. And if we're not trying to serve our acharyas through preaching, then we're not going to be able to do proper sadhana.
Can I ask the next question?
I'm your servant. You can do whatever you like, Maharaj.
Thank you. I mean, it's a very interesting question. We could speak more, but I'm just afraid that there are so many other questions, so maybe we should go next. The next question is about morning program. Prabhupada stressed importance of the morning program. There is a quote of from his letter to Abhiram Prabhu from 1975, where Prabhupada says that everyone should take bus and attend Mangalarati. Sorry, lost my. Okay, 1 second. Prabhupada very much emphasizes this attendance of morning program, especially Mangalarati, chant at least 16 good rounds, attend class, follow 4 regulative principles strictly. If these things are lax, then there is no question of spiritual life. So the question is that nowadays, many devotees, especially senior devotees, cannot always follow more schedules so strictly because of objective reasons. Sometimes devotees don't live in the temple or whatever. The question is, can the devotees compensate their lack of attendance to the program, both for their own spiritual lives and as a personal example for others? In other words, what to do if we cannot really strictly attend the morning program in the classical format which Prabhupada gave to us. What shall we do?
I will come back within 2 minutes.
Okay.
Since I'm speaking honesty, I must respond to nature's calls. So if you can just give me 2 minutes and I will be back, and
of course.
I'll be meditating on this wonderful question.
Yes, of course.
So beautiful to see all of you. Hare Krishna.
It's 228 people. Madmohan Prabhu, maybe you can turn on Prabhupada's bhajan or something.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Maharaj. And just as a short announcement for those who just joined us, we're having an open session of the Bhaktivedanta University. This is Bhagavata Sandarbha, a course in which we invite senior Prabhupada's disciples and ask them to speak on essential topics, essential for devotees' spiritual practice and their service. And this Bhaktivedanta University program is launched with the blessings and leadership of Bhaktivinoda Maharaj and the GBCs for Russia to educate and train future spiritual leaders of the Russian-speaking Yatra. We have about 100 senior devotees leaders who are studying different subjects, and this Prabhupada Sandarbha is the most important course. And we have invited all of you to attend this open session so you could have a glimpse of what we're trying to do in training and preserving the legacy of Prabhupada and his disciples and passing it down to the next generation of spiritual leaders. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll have a short Prabhupada's bhajan while Maharaj is away.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. We had a short darshan of Srila Prabhupada for our students.
That was really beautiful. That was wonderful. Thank you, Madan Mohan Prabhu. I'm so grateful to see you after so long.
Thank you very much,
To see Shamdas Prabhu also after so many years. It's wonderful. Maharaj, please tell how I can serve you. Yes.
So I asked.
Yes, you already asked the question. Now
I already asked the question.
Thank you. Mangalarti, we should try our best. We should try our best to attend Mangalarti and the full program. But we must also, recognize the spirit of what Srila Prabhupada is speaking. When Srila Prabhupada gave that instruction to Abhiram Prabhu, 99% of all devotees lived in the temple full time. So they were, within 2 or 3 minutes of the deities. Even all grihastas were living in the temple practically in those days. And at the same time, 98% of the devotees were in their 20s. The eldest devotees, which is just a handful, were in their early 30s. And, today there's devotees who are in their 80s and 70s and 60s. And, their health is not the same. So, you know, we have to apply the spirit according to the circumstance also. And today, not everybody is living in the same building as the deities. When Srila Prabhupada gave that instruction, you know, almost every devotee in our movement was living in the same building as where the deities were, and they were in their teens or 20s. So the fact that Srila Prabhupada has explained that, you know, we have to apply it according to the need. You know, when devotees were sick, Srila Prabhupada, you know, very, very much wanted us to take care of our health. And you know, in such a situation, if we're living in the temple, we should do everything we can to come to the morning program. But if because of our age, because of our health, it's very difficult, then, you know, we perform our full sadhana, but we may have to do it, you know, in a way that may be scheduled differently. What's important is we should try our best, but we should not judge others. You know, if an older devotee is not able to come to Mangalarti every day, we should not judge them. We should try to go there every day ourselves, as far as we can do. But at the same time, you know, we have to, you know, understand that, you know, devotees are trying their very best according to their health to be good examples. So I think it's important in these sense to understand the spirit of what Srila Prabhupada's saying. According to our capacity, we should try our best. And in certain situations of life, we will not have the same capacity. Again, the idea of the 64 rounds, of chanting 1 lakh of rounds every day. Lord Chaitanya, the spirit is, he's giving amount and saying, do not do less. That's the spirit. In the same spirit, Srila Prabhupada is saying, chant at least 16 rounds, not less. So in one sense, the spirit of the instruction is the same, to chant the holy names and no less than this amount. And that is why we have Guru Parampara, that the spirit of the message to chant a minimal amount of the holy names is the same, but the quantitative amount the Acharya adjusted. And we have full faith in the Acharya. Because if we don't have full faith in the Acharya, Lord Chaitanya will not want us to try to follow his instructions, jumping over our Acharya. So similarly, the spirit of, you know, rising early, you know, in some places, Srila Prabhupada says we must rise by 4 o'clock every morning. And we should seriously be trying to do that. And if we're living in the temple, we should try to do the Mangalarti every day. If we're living at home, we should try to have a Mangalarti at home every day. And if we're trying our best, Krishna will be pleased.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'll accept the next question, which is very important and essential at this moment. The question is about so many books which are becoming available in English and even in Russian. They're translated from Sanskrit or written by Prabhupada's followers. And there are so many different classes, so many different seminars, courses on so many different topics. The question is, how do we balance this with reading Prabhupada's books and recordings of his lectures? How do we, you know, how do we prioritize the whole thing, and how to use other spiritual sources so they not eclipse but reinforce Srila Prabhupada's legacy in the minds of future generation of devotees? It's a very relevant question.
Yes. To really make spiritual advancement while reading these other books, it's important that we understand them through the lens of Srila Prabhupada's books. Srila Prabhupada told us his purports were his devotional ecstasies. Even if Srila Prabhupada's speaking basic philosophy or basic Vaishnava culture, because he's doing it with such deep compassion from that state of his ecstatic love for Sri Sri Radha Govinda in Brindaban, when we're actually reading sincerely with a submissive heart, then we're receiving Srila Prabhupada. We're receiving Srila Prabhupada's devotional ecstasies. And our primary reading should be Srila Prabhupada's books, because it gives us the proper state of consciousness, the proper state of obedience and submission to our Acharya. And then when we read these other books, we will have the blessings and the grace to actually be able to assimilate and understand them. And there are various other types of books. Some books by our ISKCON devotees are there to help us to go deeper to understand Srila Prabhupada's books. And some are simply to present the writings of previous acharyas. Those who are presenting the writings of the previous acharyas, we should understand that we will really get the benefit of this literature according to how we're blessed by Srila Prabhupada. We're blessed by our own gurus. And to honor and respect Srila Prabhupada's great compassion in writing his books is very much a part of how we will receive his blessings. So again, a balance is very, very important. Does that answer the question, Maharaj?
Yes, I believe. Yes. So I will ask the last question from the organizers, and then there are so many questions from the participants of this program. Some were collected before and some are coming up now. The last question was about internet. Internet has become the mainstay for many, if not most, ISKCON educational and preaching programs. What are the dangers associated with its prominence in our spiritual lives? What is the healthy balance between online and offline preaching and association? How would Srila Prabhupada use himself the internet, and how he would have us use the internet if he were physically present with us these days?
Thank you, Maharaj. I wish there was no internet, actually.
How would we hear you?
but there is. And today, you know, here I am sitting, you know, in this little village north of Chicago, looking at all of you and speaking to all of you and receiving the blessings of all of you. It's through internet, so I'm very grateful. And whether we're speaking in a class where we're all together physically, or whether we're speaking in a class where we're all together through internet, there really is not a difference. What's important is the subject. The problem with internet is all of the prajalpa and all of the aparads that are all over the world, because it's so easy to, Srila Prabhupada, when there was something like a fax machine, which was very much like what internet would be, but in the 70s, and devotees wanted to set it up, and Srila Prabhupada said, no, you should not, because you will simply speak prajalpa. And right now on the internet, there's such a massive amount of prajalpa and offenses, and that is poison, and it's very, very dangerous. But at the same time, where there's actual pure Krishna Katha, then the internet is non-different than being in a Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's the sound vibration that makes it either negative or positive. It's not the device. Whether we're sitting in a temple or whether we're sitting under a tree on the bank of the Yamuna in Brindaban, or on the bank of the Ganga in Mayapur, or whether we're sitting in our homes in Moscow or St. Petersburg or Kiev, Ukraine, or Chicago, you know, it's not the place, it's the content of the subject that gives it relevance and purity. So if the subject of pure Hari Katha is coming through the internet, it's non-different than receiving it on the bank of the Ganges. The danger is, on the bank of the Ganges, there's nothing else around except devotees and Hari Katha. But on the internet, you can easily just press a few buttons and get all kinds of prajalpa. So in that way, the internet is very dangerous, and being there in a temple room or in a holy place, you know, you're there, there's nothing else except that. So that's the advantage. But if on the internet, if we're actually fixed and we're not wavering, and we're hearing the Hari Katha and we're speaking the Hari Katha, then it's non-different. It is a blessing. Internet is a great blessing when it's used to receive and to give Krishna consciousness. And the internet is a great curse when it's used for prajalpa, for mundane subjects, and for criticizing others.
If you don't mind, I'll ask you somewhat controversial question and follow up what you said. Some very prominent devotees in the recent past, they very much emphasize that it's not the same when the sound vibration is reproduced by some mechanical means. They would say that this is not the same, and they were very much alarmed by the proliferation of these mechanical devices reproducing the sound vibration. You just said that there is no difference. So can you reconcile with concern which some very prominent have this, what they really meant by expressing their concerns.
Let us. It's a matter of our attention to hear. That is very, very important. You know, in many ways, Srila Prabhupada, you know, he would, when he was physically present with us in this world, he would be at a temple, let us say, Bhaktivedanta Manor in London, and he would give a Srimad Bhagavatam class. But it was his desire that his classes be recorded. And then the cassette tapes of those classes were sent all over the world. So, you know, at the time I was just living on a little mountain milking cows at New Brindaban, and I would get one cassette a week that I would trade off. And I would listen to that cassette of Srila Prabhupada's lecture. And what I was listening to became my life and soul. Was I hearing something else than the people who were sitting in the temple room at Bhaktivedanta Manor? What I would say is if somebody like His Holiness Jai Patak Swami Maharaj was listening to that lecture of Bhaktivedanta Manor while he was in Mayapur on a mechanical cassette player, which is a machine, was he getting something, was he hearing something less than those who were in the temple room in Bhaktivedanta Manor? I would say it's a matter of tadvidi pranipatina pariprashnena sevaya. It's not a matter of whether it's mechanical or whether it's, you know, physically in person. It's a matter of how we are submissive, how we have a service attitude, and how we're attentively hearing. That's what's going to give power to the sound vibration. In certain ways, books are made by machines. You know, the printing presses of the books are highly mechanized machines. And when we're reading the books, you know, it's a result of a machine printing it. But my God, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to read his books every day, and Srila Prabhupada sometimes emphasized that reading my books is more important than just coming to my lectures. And his lectures are on recordings. So I would say, you know, in certain circumstances, whoever you might be citing, it may be speaking to a particular circumstance and situation where that's true. But in most cases, if the sound vibration is pure Harikatha and we're hearing it through the internet and we tadvidi pranipatina, and we have a submissive attitude and a service attitude, and we really have the will to follow and apply what we're hearing, then it's non-different. It's sound vibration.
Okay.
And if we have the opportunity to be there live in person with someone, we should run to it. But if all we have that's accessible and available to us is, you know, through the medium of internet or recordings, then we can get the same benefit. Our eagerness to hear and our eagerness to serve is what is going to be determining the quality of what we hear.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to confirm what you said, I recently read a book by Gargamuni Prabhu, And he said that in the beginning, he was emphasizing very recording his classes, so much so that when the cassette would run out, Prabhupada would stop his lecture and wait when they changed the cassette, and only then he would continue his lecture, so that every word of his lecture would be recorded. So.
And all over only a few people could hear it live, but the whole world of ISKCON was hearing the cassettes. And some of the most advanced devotees in our movements only heard Prabhupada physically in his presence a couple times, a few times. The rest of the time it was through the machines of the cassettes and through the books. And whether it's physically live or whether it's in another way, as I emphasized, the importance is, how are we submissive? How are we humbly receiving this message with a will to serve? That's what will give the power within our own minds and hearts to the message we're receiving.
Thank you. I'll start asking the questions. One question was asked already very long ago. It's a very interesting question from Pavana Dasa. You often say that in your preaching that we can only preach about what we do ourselves. In fact, you even said that it is very degraded to preach what one is not doing himself. On the other hand, preaching is a means of purification and one that teaches us to be more responsible, and by helping others, we help ourselves. How should we try and resolve this apparent contradiction by, on one hand, preaching only what we do ourselves, but on the other hand, to purify our hearts by speaking about the topics that are still inaccessible, yet inspiring for us and others?
I think your question needs to be understood in context. It's not that preaching to something that you don't have realization of is degrading. But if we are willfully doing sinful activities and we're preaching something else, then that's degrading. But if we're honestly and earnestly trying to follow, even if we're preaching things that are beyond our realizations, that will purify us. For most of us, dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovaram chara. This verse is beyond our realization. When you get sick and you really feel miserable, you realize that I have not realized I'm not this body. So how can I preach it? If we're sincerely trying to follow the regulative principles and we're sincerely trying to follow the character of a devotee, then our preaching is purifying. Practically everything we speak is beyond our realizations. What to speak of Radharani's loving affairs with Krishna? We haven't even realized I'm not my body yet. So that's why it's important to be humble. It's important to be humble and understand that we're not preaching down at somebody. We're not preaching, even when we're preaching to people who are not devotees, A Vaishnava does not think I'm better than this person and therefore no, we should be feeling Krishna's in the heart of this person and I'm serving this person. Srila Prabhupada often would say that he saw all of his disciples as the representatives of his Guru Maharaj. He was putting all of us on such an elevated state of being representatives of his Guru Maharaj. He was preaching even to the most sinful people at 26 Avenue who were addicted to all kinds of activities. He was cooking for them. He was cleaning for them. He was preaching to them, serving them. That was his mood. So preaching is a service. If preaching is a way of expressing our superiority, then it's not preaching in the spirit of Mahaprabhu and the Acharyas. Preaching is, I don't know anything. I'm simply repeating the message of my Guru Maharaj, and I'm honestly and earnestly trying to follow. Even if I have no realizations, I'm trying my best honestly to follow, and I'm repeating that message. And that is perfect preaching. And that type of preaching will purify our hearts. That is not hypocrisy. Hypocrisy does not mean I speak something, but I don't have the realization. Hypocrisy is I'm speaking something, but I'm willfully doing the opposite without really the intent to change. Does that clarify the subject, Maharaj?
Yes, definitely. I'll ask one question which I see in the chat. There are so many other questions. Maybe Madmohan can help me with prioritizing them. But this is one, it's a little bit controversial, but it's interesting to have your opinion on this topic. The question is basically about the 11th and 10th, 11th and 12th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Is there any difference in reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, which was given by Srila Prabhupada and commented by Srila Prabhupada, and reading this cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, which were not directly translated and commented on by Srila Prabhupada himself?
Living in this world, there are so many different opinions about everything. And there is the basic principle that we need to really imbibe is Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. Inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference. So in one sense, there's a difference because one is directly the words of Srila Prabhupada. But at the same time, Srila Prabhupada ordered for his disciples to write, the latter parts of the 10th, 11th, and 12th cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So because the devotees were doing it on the order of Srila Prabhupada, and they were doing it honestly and earnestly according to, from the lens of Srila Prabhupada's books, they were taking the commentaries of the previous acharyas as Srila Prabhupada did. In that sense, there's no difference. There is a difference because one is directly Srila Prabhupada, but there's no difference because this was done by the order of Srila Prabhupada. And it was done in a very honest and earnest way.
Thank you, Maharaj. Very nice. There is a very interesting question in regard of what you have said in the beginning. What does it practically mean? It's Damadara Priya Devidasi, she is asking this question. What does it practically mean to perform sadhana with an intent to please Guru and Krishna? If sincerely looking at my motive, I can see that the motive for performing sadhana is just to feel good, to show devotees how educated I am, and not to feel guilty before spiritual master. So it's a very sincere question.
All of those are nice. Everyone naturally wants to feel good. And everyone naturally likes to be appreciated by others. So we shouldn't feel bad about that. But most important is we're doing all of those things in a mood to please our gurus. And what pleases our gurus and Srila Prabhupada and Mahaprabhu is that we're really trying to be humble servants of servants of servants. We're really trying to apply this principle that everyone is a Prabhu and I am a Das, Das Anu Das, or Dasi, Dasi, Dasi Anu Dasi. That spirit is very important, and we should be striving to live with that spirit. But at the same time, to feel good and to be appreciated are natural. They're not bad things. But if they cause us to make offenses, then they're bad things. Does that answer the question, Damodar?
Yeah,
Devi?
well, maybe she can answer, I don't know, but it definitely answers to me. I don't know if she's present at the moment. But there are some other questions in line. One question is from Ishan. He is the temple president in Sochi, in South Russia. He's concerned about Sahajiya mentality in their spiritual practice. He's kind of concerned that people sometimes take things lightly or start speaking about elevated subject matters. So how can modern generation of devotees avoid this? I guess the implication of this question that during Prabhupada it was very clear because Prabhupada emphasized it very much. But now when the personal presence of Srila Prabhupada not so strongly felt as when he was there with us, there is a great temptation in going into this daily talks, sometimes without Prabhupada. So how to avoid temptation? I don't know if I'm properly explaining the question. Ishan can correct me, but I think that's the implication.
You know what the problem is, Maharaj? That the sound of what's coming to me is breaking up.
Oh.
I'm sure you're explaining the question perfectly, but I can't hear it perfectly.
Well, because the connection is weak, so Maharaj can disable his video, and that will help.
Yeah, that's what I did. I disabled my video, and I will repeat what I said. I think the implication
just repeat the essence of it.
Yeah. The implication is that when Prabhupada was personally present, he was emphasizing very much the importance of being not so in a hurry with this elevated subject matters. But when his personal presence is no more, there is a great temptation to take all these elevated subject matters too quickly without having proper adhikar. So how to avoid this temptation?
We need to be very honest and very careful. The propensity of sahaja is very strong in the world today to take things cheaply. Generally, a devotee values his or her own adhikar through the basics. How am I actually tasting the sweetness of the holy names, both in kirtan as well as in japa? How am I actually following this principle of trinadapi sunichena and offering all respect to others and not expecting oneself? If we're truly and honestly experiencing the higher taste of the holy name, and we're truly and honestly not criticizing others and offering respect to others and really feel ourselves a humble service attitude, then that's our qualification to actually understand any spiritual subject matter. What to speak of the higher realms. Even the basic realms are actually only really understood when we have the proper character and the proper sadhana. So what I see is when a devotee wants to skip over the necessities of trinadapi sunichena, of proper devotional character, of developing a taste for the holy name, when we can't do that, we want to jump over it and try to be advanced by hearing these very, very high, intimate rasika subject matters. And if we do that, then these subject matters simply remain theoretical in our minds. They cannot touch the heart until we're ready for it. You cannot have proper realization if you jump over. You cannot have realization if you try to skip the basics. Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas emphasized that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he discussed in detail the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna with Srila Ramananda Rai and with Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami, as far as the details of it. For all others, you know, he promoted the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he gave us entrance into the conjugal loving affairs of Radha and Krishna, but through the appropriate method. And to just jump into these very intimate subjects without having the proper qualification, without having the proper purification and taste by chanting, without living a proper life of humble devotion, it can have the opposite effect. The more we know these things intellectually, if we're not qualified, the more we'll think I know more than others. We can think that the information that I'm memorizing and hearing is making me advanced. I have more information than you, that means I'm more advanced than you. you know, that Brahmin in South India, he couldn't understand the information of Bhagavad Gita as much as all the pundits who were there in Sri Rangam. But he had such a humble service attitude that he realized everything of the Gita without even the information. Whereas others had the information, they memorized it, they could speak it, but they didn't have the adhikar to actually realize it. So we should be learning these things in a way that pleases our gurus and Krishna, not in ways that please our egos. It's not the information and the memorization. It's our receptivity. And one of the greatest dangers of these higher subjects is if we're not ready to receive it in proper doses, then it increases our false ego. And we think, I'm more advanced than others, I know more than others, and that means you don't really know anything. When we're actually trinadapi sinichena, then we can enter into these subject matters and absorb it, assimilate it. Otherwise, it's just a type of mental entertainment. We want these subject matters to go deep into our hearts. And that's why our basic sadhana and our basic Vaishnava character needs to be very, very highly developed before these subject matters could really go into our hearts. Srila Prabhupada gave us he gave us these higher subject matters in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Krishna book, in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in their Nectar of Devotion, but he gave it in a perspective. He gave it in a balance that was healthy for us to hear it. And it's important that we honor that balance.
Thank you, Maharaj. There is quite a few
Braja Leela is the Braja Leela, the pastimes of Brindaban are revealed within the heart when Srimati Radharani is pleased that we are truly the servant of her servants. And Srimati Radharani appeared as Lord Chaitanya to teach us how to please her in that way. And whether we're hearing it directly or whether, even if we're hearing it directly, we will not understand it, we will not realize it, it will not transform us unless it's revealed within our hearts.
Thank you, Maharaj.
In my own life, I became a devotee in Brindaban. And I became a devotee in Brindaban when there was no such thing as ISKCON in Brindaban. There was no temple and there was no ISKCON devotees. I was living among Brijabasis, and everybody I knew, they just loved Radharani. And they loved these intimate pastimes of Radharani. And it was just a beautiful experience. But to be honest with you, hardly anyone I knew there was a sahaja. They were honest, sincere, humble people. And when I came in contact with Srila Prabhupada and started reading his books and hearing his teachings, I understood Srila Prabhupada is actually giving us the honest and sure way of being a resident of Brindaban.
Thank you. That was very beautiful and instructive. I got quite a few more questions, but I think our time is running out. I would like to ask one personal question from my own. You emphasized very much, and then there is one question which was asked long ago. Maybe we can limit our time with these two questions.
My suggestion, Maharaj, is ask one more question, and then we could have a short kirtan.
Okay. Okay, so Manmohan, maybe you can direct me which question I should ask. Should I ask Damayuta Prabhu's question or my own question?
Maharaj, it's a very difficult choice. Damayuta Prabhu asked his question long ago when we asked.
Okay, so I'll ask his question.
But your question might be more profound.
No. So the question from Damayuta Prabhu is, when we are neophyte devotees, when new devotees, we don't see the connection of the external world with the Lord. So how we can remain in this kind of mood and dealing with the external world or being engaged in external. I think again the implication is that, you know, because we don't see the connection, sometimes we take the external world too seriously or too much disturbed by the external circumstances. So how we remain in this playful, touched mood when we yet not realize the connection of the world with the Supreme Lord?
We're taught to see through the eyes of the scriptures. So it's important to hear. You know, when we go to the temple to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam class, the Bhagavad Gita class, when we're reading from Srila Prabhupada's books or the books by his, you know, loyal servants, when we're hearing recordings, when we're discussing among each other, it's very important that we hear Shravanam, because it gives us every time Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. We should hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day, and we should serve those people who are living the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is very important. There's such great emphasis on every day regularly hearing, because that's where we get our vision. And if we're sincere hearing, then we're humbling ourselves. We're like Parikshit Maharaj. We're hungry for this information, and when we're hungry for the knowledge, then we digest the knowledge. And then, you know, we go through the day with that perspective. It's a matter of our sincerity, that yes, I'm hearing and I'm perceiving the world and responding to the world according to what I have heard.
Maharaj, if I may, thank you so much. If I may ask you very humbly, if you could, for our benefit, let Bhaktivinoda Maharaj ask his question, and as an exception, you could answer it, please. Sorry for being so audacious, Maharaj.
Thank you for being so audacious. Maharaj, what is your question?
I thought you care and the approach with attitude. At the same time, when Shri Chakravarti directly asks this question in Madhurya Kadambini, when he says what is more important, to do or to develop the qualities and character, his answer is sadhana is more important, and the qualities and character are secondary. So how to reconcile this? Whether he's speaking for another audience or but he clearly says that yes. Shall I repeat?
Who are you quoting? Because you're breaking up a lot.
Oh, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Madhurya Kadambini. He says that the qualities are secondary, the character is secondary, sadhana is primary, more or less.
They're inseparable. In certain ways, what specific character and qualities are being spoken about here is something to be explored. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, Trinadapi Sunichena. This is the basic principle of the character of a devotee. And and he's telling us that it's inseparable to the quality of our sadhana. Put this on the string of the holy name and wear it always. This is his instruction. So, the higher levels of character, the higher levels of realized character only come by the grace of the Lord, through our sadhana. But in order to perform our sadhana appropriately, our character is essential. When Srila Prabhupada asked us to take the vow of the 4 regulative principles and 16 rounds, he made those quite inseparable. At the beginning stages, just chanting, purifies us. But to go deeper into it, we have to actually be following the proper character. Because the 4 regulative principles are just about character. So initially, our sadhana is, if we can just, whoever they are, if we could get them to chant the holy names, then they're going to benefit. But then gradually, to make more advancement, we have to actually start living like a Vaisnava, with the character of a Vaisnava. So the tendency is to put our sadhana second to other things. And therefore, to give ultimate prominence to our sadhana, that type of emphasis is necessary. And to go actually really, really deep into the real character, the internal real character of a Vaishnava, it can only happen when we're sincerely taking shelter of the holy names. So in that sense, sadhana is first. And yes, character is subordinate to sadhana, but our character is necessary to actually perform our sadhana properly. Did I explain it in a way that's understandable?
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Maybe
you know, we see in Rupa Goswami, we see in Raghunath Das Goswami, we see in Haridas Thakur, we see their sadhana, and we also see their character. And you know, when Sanatan Goswami was inquiring from Lord Chaitanya at Varanasi, you know, he said, I'm the most fallen. I don't know anything. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm suffering. People say I'm learned, and actually I don't know anything. I'm the most fallen. Please instruct me. And Haridas Thakur is saying, I am the least among all the devotees. Every one of them is fit to sit on my head. And, you know, this is the character of these devotees. And what is their sadhana? So yes, it's this, everything is subordinate to the chanting of the holy names and hearing the glories of the Lord, because that's the process that awakens love of Krishna in us. So that's on the topmost position, our sadhana. But in order to do that sadhana in a way that pleases Krishna beyond a certain point of just, you know, preparing ourselves for bhakti, our character is essential.
Very much
What's more important, a perfect medicine or the digestive aid that's needed to digest that medicine? If you just take the digestive aid, you're not going to get better. You have to take the medicine, but you may need a digestive aid in order to digest the medicine. So the sadhana, enechi asadi maya nashi barolagi harina mahamantra lao tumi magi. Thakur Bhakti Vinod quotes Lord Chaitanya, I've come to bring the medicine of the holy names. But Lord Chaitanya has also given us aids that help us to actually digest that medicine so that it has its full effect.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Unless we give that emphasis to our sadhana, then our character is just the mode of goodness. But the mode of goodness helps us to digest the real medicine, which is the sadhana, the holy names of the Lord and the glories of the Lord. So with that, shall we have kirtan?
Yes. 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 Being a song, sharing experience and
Is it possible that everyone could turn on their videos so I can see people?
And dear devotees, please do not disconnect after the kirtan. We'll have a very short presentation for 10 minutes after the kirtan of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj.
Okay, I will begin the kirtan in 1 minute.
Дорогие преданные, пожалуйста, не отключайтесь после киртана. Сразу после киртана будет очень короткая, но важная презентация, которую также проведет Шрила Бхактивинода Махарадж по результатам курса герменевтики. Нас ждут очень приятные сюрпризы для некоторых из вас. Спасибо большое.
yes, конечно.
Похоже, Махарадж нам не даст провести презентацию с вашим участием, потому что интернет ваш не позволяет, не было понятно ничего из того, что вы сказали сейчас, даже с выключением видео. Может, вы сказали, что не получится?
Это искажение.
Хорошо, тогда мы объявим отдельно, когда эта презентация произойдет.
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Desha Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. If at least one person could have their volume on so I could hear.
Харе, Харе. Дорогие преданные, можете включить свои микрофоны.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Nitai Gauda Haribo, 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 Haribo. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patithanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Radhanath Maharaj. Please accept our humble obeisances. And we will look forward to having more of your precious soul shape via the internet and also in person. If I may ask you also, Maharaj, here on your side, there is a video of our enthusiastic Brahmachari Ashram, the Sankirtana devotees of Moscow, and your disciple, Madhava Puri Prabhu, sitting up front, is the leader of the ashram, and there are many disciples and grand disciples of yours in the ashram who are very enthusiastically serving by preaching and also performing sadhana very seriously, both things. So if you could kindly bless them and all of us for continued enthusiasm and service attitude.
I thank you, beloved brahmacharis, and I pray for Srila Prabhupada and the six Goswamis, Rupa Raghunath, to shower their blessings upon all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maharaj. Ранат Махарадж сказал, что он молится Шриле Прабхупаде и всем предшествующим ачарьям, 6 Госвамиям Вриндавана, Рупа Рагунатхи, чтобы они одарили вас всеми благословениями. Вы мои возлюбленные брахмачари. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your precious insulation and for giving us Srila Prabhupada from the depths of your heart. Thank you.
Thank you. I beg forgiveness for my I'm yearning and longing and praying to return to Russia and Ukraine and Lithuania and all of your wonderful countries. And you are the best devotees in the world. And I'm so grateful to you. I'm so proud of you. And I'm earnestly longing for your association.
Махарадж говорит, пожалуйста, простите меня за все мои недостатки. Я искренне молю о возможности когда-нибудь снова оказаться в России, в Украине, и в этих замечательных местах. Вы самые лучшие преданные на свете. Я искренне желаю снова получить ваше общение.
And Bhaktivigyan Goswami Maharaj told me that there's a temple in Moscow that I've never seen, and I'm so much hoping that very soon Krishna will allow me to come.
Бхактивигьян Махарадж сказал мне, что уже появился храм в Москве новый. Я его еще не видел, но молю о Кришне о возможности поскорее его увидеть. Надеюсь, так получится. We'll look forward to that, Maharaj.
And actually, just seeing each and every one of you is the greatest joy of my life.
Для меня величайшая радость жизни видеть всех вас.
Separation is very effective spiritual practice, feeling separation to deepen our appreciation when we can be together again.
Разлука – это очень могущественная духовная практика, которая позволяет нам наполняться жаждой снова увидеть друг друга лично.
And I'm very much feeling separation from Anandini Devi and Nitai Chaitanya Maharaj and the various devotees who have departed.
Я и также испытываю острую боль разлуки с Анандини Деви, Нитай Чайтанья Махараджем и другими преданными, которые ушли из этого мира.
And somehow or other, during this little bit of time when we can physically be together, let us really learn to appreciate the blessing of being with in the association of devotees.
Поэтому тот короткий миг времени, который выпал нам, на наше счастье, мы можем видеть друг друга и общаться друг с другом. Давайте пользоваться этим временем сполна, чтобы научиться по-настоящему ценить друг друга и служить друг другу.
And in the news, there is a lot of talk about the political conflict that's happening between some of your countries. And with all my heart, I just pray and pray and pray that Lord Chaitanya's movement and his devotees remain safe and empowered.
В новостях очень много сообщений о том, что какие-то политические конфликты сейчас снова разгораются между некоторыми вашими странами. Я молю в своем сердце о том, чтобы Господь Чайтанья уберег всех своих преданных, чтобы они продолжали проповедовать.
Thank you very much.
Большое спасибо.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your support, humble obeisances. Шрила Радханаth Swami Maharaja ki jai. Thank you. I cannot really bring myself to clicking that red button end, Maharaj. I wish there were no such button.
Actually, the red button it's the beginning of our being together in separation.
Махарадж, что я не могу заставить и нажать на красную кнопку «Закончить сессию», и Махарадж сказал, эта красная кнопка начинает просто нашу разлуку, общение в разлуке.
It's the start button for love and separation.
Не закончить, а начать разлуку в любви.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.